Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast brought to you by Literal Humans. As always, I'm Paul David, founder and CEO of Literal Humans and your host. I'm joined today by Steven Puri, founder and CEO of the Sukha Company. Welcome, Steven.
Great to be here. For those playing along at home or in their cars, Paul's done some amazing episodes. I think the thing that'll be interesting about this is we will try to make it entertaining, engaging, and maybe actionable out some of these ideas.
Let's do it. Well, let's jump into just introducing the audience to who you are. Founder and CEO of Sukha. Sukha means happiness. From where? What's the
Sanskrit, the old language.
Oh, I enjoy that. Okay. So the Sukha Company, platform dedicated to helping remote workers stay focused, finish their work faster, and feel healthier doing it. Steven has had one of the most fascinating careers we've seen on this show, from raising 21 million in venture funding across 3 tech startups, including one successful exit, serving as a studio executive and producer across major Hollywood studios like DreamWorks, 20th Century Fox, and Sony. Having worked across both high-pressure and creative environments and fast-moving tech companies, he's seen firsthand how remote work has transformed productivity, culture, and personal well-being. Sukha was born from that insight, offering a healthier work fitness approach designed specifically for remote and hybrid workers, tackling procrastination, distraction, burnout at the source. Welcome to the pod, Steven.
Awesome to be here. Hope we have some fun stuff to share. Yes, it's been interesting working both as a studio executive on films and also running some tech companies. 2 failures, 1 successful exit. So let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Let's jump in. And it must be like today must be sort of like, we had another folks on from an app called Fluid Focus. It's one episode you might want to look at.
Cool.
Very similar, very aligned. They're kind of working in the higher education and I would say mid-market space. So like working with companies who are trying to help folks with like productivity and, avoid burnout. So there's a lot of overlap there. Maybe
That's
your competitors,
awesome, yeah.
I don't know, but yeah.
It is a noble goal.
It is. Well, let's jump in. So like remote work, it's like a fascinating one. Like I was lucky enough to be in that first wave of digital nomads, like in sort of, the mid 2010s, and I traveled the world. And then when the pandemic came, it was like, everyone's like, oh, remote work. And I was like, this is not remote work. This is being caged in your home and being forced into systems you weren't trained on. So I kind of remember some of the heydays of remote work. And then there was the pandemic, and then there's the post, where we're sort of hybrid. So like set the scene for our audience. Like, why is remote work, breaking traditional productivity models? We were promised freedom, but for many, it's kind of created isolation, distraction, burnout. Like, what do you see the root causes of these challenges in kind of the remote work context today?
Here's the funny thing that a lot of people don't realize is that in film, remote and hybrid is not a novel concept, right? For 100 years in film, the typical process of a film getting made is writers are writing remotely in their homes, in coffee shops, in their writing partner's living room. You know what I mean?
Right. Writers'
Hopefully
rooms.
one of those ideas gets a little traction. Suddenly you get a little money.
Yeah.
Producer often opens a small production office where 2 days a week you go in, talk to the costumer. What are they going to wear? Talk to the location scout. Do you think we could shoot this in Montana? And then everyone goes off the rest of the week. The writers doing rewrites in their living room for Brad Pitt, and the costumer is going to costume house and stuff. At a certain point, it is RTO. It is you are on set day and night for months on end in the thick of it. Then it goes back to hybrid with picture editors, sound editors, Foley artists working, and sort of floating it out. And eventually you go back to remote. So that arc of how a film gets made has been established for a very long time. So leaders know how to lead through each phase, and individual contributors know how to contribute. Now, they're not called historically the remote period. You would say, oh, Paul, I see you're in development. Oh, I see you're in pre-production or prep. Oh, I see you're in post. These are the terms you use for it, but you understand as a producer, as a leader, as a studio executive, how those things work, right? So it was interesting because yes, I had gotten back into tech, which is where I started. Before the film thing, I kind of got into film because I was producing digital film, right? I got back into tech before the pandemic hit. So it was very interesting to see, yes, the pandemic hit, suddenly Zoom becomes a verb. We have this crazy adjustment to we can't be under the same fluorescent lights all day long every day, right? And you're right, those skills were not necessarily there. And there was a lot of fear. Like the pendulum swung really far and the pendulum has swung back a bit. Now, what I'll tell you is I think that the most successful leaders are the ones that define work by the effect of someone's act.
Right. Outcomes
Rather than
focused
by
instead
the
of
time or the place, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like if you look at billion-dollar companies, they are not defined because everyone was in a stand-up meeting and said, oh, yes, Paul, what did you do? Oh, yesterday I did this, today I did this, and by the way, I'm not blocked. Next person, Steven. No one wins because all my Slack messages returned. My email inbox is 0, right? They win because someone says, hey man, yesterday I went on a walk for like an hour and I thought deeply about our competitor and that new thing they launched. And here's, I think, how we counter that. And everyone in the meeting sort of turns their head. They're like, we should leave now and build that. Like, that's a fantastic idea. And that doesn't come from my Slack messages are done. I sat next to you all day long and looked busy. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's great to be co-located. There are some activities, like a lot of creative brainstorming I've done, flat out, never had a Zoom or a Google Meet for a creative brainstorm that has felt as rich as sitting in the room, like with the blackboard you have behind you. I'm joking.
The felt
whiteboard, whatever.
No, I've got a whiteboard right here.
And have that sense of like the energy and just the creative, the thing of, well, not that, but this, sort of thing. But there are also like a lot of people who use our platform at Sukha, developers, designers, writers. They do need like that chunk of time to do knowledge work. I need to go deep. I can do brilliant work in 5 hours, or I can do sort of like scattered work in 8. And that difference is really what we're talking about. When I would argue tech can save us, as bad as tech is, there are some things that help. And that is the thing I think is most interesting about whether it's remote or co-located work. You know, synchronous, asynchronous, distributed, whatever terms you want to use. It's really about, do you define someone's work by the effect of their actions as opposed to where and when they did it?
Yeah, I think that's something that people are feeling in their bones, like, not wanting presenteeism, not wanting to, be monitored by like software that's monitoring their clicks and their mouse and things like that. And so it sort of leads me into this next question, just setting the scene a bit more of sort of, this idea that companies are still using outdated systems built for, in-person office-based work, and that's having an impact on performance and morale. So I want to dig into that with you, and then sort of like building out of that, telling us about the trends that you're seeing and how remote teams are trying and sometimes struggling a bit to kind of recreate structure and connection and focus. And that'll sort of be our bridge into talking about Sukha and the product that you have. But yeah, just help us understand what's going on right now as we're kind of emerging from these outdated systems into remote teams focus.
Well, here's the thing is, and I think if you study Berkshire Hathaway and the many things that Charlie and Warren have written, talking about show me the incentives in a system and I'll tell you what the outcomes will be, right? And it is true. As a leader, you can define the incentives. Hey man, Paul, I'm going to pat you on the head if your TPS reports are in Fridays at 10 every Friday. That is how I'm incentivizing you, right? And you will get a guy named Paul who makes sure his reports are in at 10 a.m. on Friday. Does your company win for that? Probably not, right? Now, I would offer a deeper thought because I talk to a lot of, this is a very common pattern. We will have a bunch of developers or a bunch of designers that are using Sukha. They're in the community, right? And then the engineering manager or someone above them would be like, hey man, 6 of my guys use this. Can I get a site license or something? They seem to be liking it and helping with Burnout. So that turns into an interesting conversation. I'm like, hey, what problems are you dealing with? So you get to hear from the leader of this little team about burnout, about all these things, about RTO, and I'll tell you this, when you do, the 6 whys, you're like, well, why do you think that is, Paul? Oh, well, why is that? Bottom, you get to his fear. And it often is this, you know what? Either I or my boss wants everyone here because I really don't know what Paul's doing Tuesday at 3 p.m.
Right.
We have a hunch he may be playing ball with his dog. Oh, okay. So you're coming from a place of fear. Okay. Gotcha. Now that's interesting because I'll tell you the great leaders that I have seen, it is not about that kind of management of like, what is someone doing at 3 p.m.? Are the TPS reports stapled, right? It is rather, they come from a belief that they have hired well, and that everyone has greatness inside them. And your responsibility as a leader is to elicit that greatness, to create the conditions where the people you've brought in can express their greatness. And it's a very different way of approaching it than like, I just didn't see you putting the hours in. Like you were not at your desk Tuesday afternoon. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I DGAF whether you're at your desk. I care whether you said the thing in the staff meeting or people are like, Paul, let's do that now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too. I was reading this article the other day about how, I think it was in Fast Company, about how kind of your AI strategy is essentially your management philosophy, your leadership philosophy, right? Because if like you're using it for surveillance and sort of checking up on people, like you can use AI for that, also. But so kind of looking at leaders and saying, okay, like the way you're framing your AI strategy is saying a lot about your leadership philosophy. And I think that's really fascinating.
And whether you're just using RTO as a way to riff, as a way to go on your shareholder calls and say, oh yeah, we're downsizing 15% by purging people, for the RTO. It's an easy way to just like push people out. That's the thing.
Yeah. Interesting. So like, let's dig into your product. I mean, so we've set the scene a little bit for our audience and would love to kind of understand like how Sukha, helps remote workers stay focused, finish faster, feel healthier. This is something I felt, I was a digital nomad, a freelance writer in the sort of heyday of content marketing. Actually feel for a lot of, young content marketers and stuff like that. If ChatGPT came out in 2015, 2016, like I would have been shitting my pants. But like, walk us through your approach with Sukha and like what happens when a user wants to overcome distraction, procrastination. Talk to us about that.
I appreciate your teeing up a great question about something that's dear to my heart. I'd like to talk about something foundational for a moment first that I think really like sort of helps us understand what's going on, which is like Laura, my wife, and I both came from, SF, LA, New York, and a bunch of friends are or have been inside one of the Facebook companies, the Meta companies, or at Twitter, now called X. Not so much Snap, but mainly like Insta, Facebook. And to really understand the incentives inside those companies provided to the developers, to the designers, you understand just how when you entitle a podcast Tech Can't Save Us, it is amazing because suppose you do buy into my thesis, which is everyone has something great inside them. And the question of this lifetime is, will you get it out? It's not if you have it.
Yeah.
The highest market cap companies on the stock market, their business model is steal your life, period, full stop. And 10 years ago, they were very embarrassed about it. It's like Zuckerberg would get called to Congress and he'd do that little routine he would do is just, Senator, we're just here. Grandmothers can see their grandkids' videos. That's what we do here, exactly. Right? You remember those days you'd testify to work on
the good old days when they weren't on the Economic Council or something like that.
Oh my God, unreal. Yeah. And, now if you listen to any of the shareholder calls, there's no embarrassment. They're unabashedly saying, listen, we have these great behavioral economists, psychologists, developers, designers on staff. We're deploying these techniques. This is how we did stealing everyone's life this quarter. By the way, we have new techniques next quarter. We're going to try and steal more of everyone's lives. We call it shareholder value. And this is what we do. So in a sense, it is as if you have something great inside you. I don't know what it is. It may be the next great chicken restaurant. It may be the next great company. It may be the great American novel, great British novel, You may have that thing inside you. And the biggest companies on earth, their incentive is to make sure that 80 years old, you are sitting on the sofa, scrolling and double tapping, telling everyone around you, oh yeah, I could have written that book. Oh yeah, I had that idea for a company. Oh yeah, I could have done that. And that is what they're incentivized to make sure that you do. So if there's a tug of war for your life, and on one side of that rope are trillion-dollar companies with the smartest people on earth, and the other side of the rope is you sure as fuck better have some allies.
Yeah.
That's where we come in.
So yeah, I mean, kind of building out of that in terms of, this idea of like work fitness, like I love that idea, right? And I think people are really, especially into it these days, like we've done work with Aura. I'm wearing one of our former clients, there's Whoop, and just the connective tissue, like people want to perform, they want to feel excellent, in their body and at work and things like that, but also they want to be balanced, and they don't want to burn out. So help us understand like this idea of work fitness, what it means, how it's different than typical productivity that we see in many apps right now. And y'all are integrating a lot of behavioral science and micro habits, wellness principles.
Exactly.
Tell us about that.
If there used to be this relentless quest for high productivity, you have to stop for a moment and say, to what end? Why do I want to be productive? If you have a reason, suppose, Paul, you are going to write the next great British novel, whatever that is, or you're going to create the next great app or something, then there is something meaningful that you feel that you can do and should do. Then you need to assemble the habits and the tools that are going to allow you to do that. And it may be a side hustle. Like you may be at Literal Humans. At the same time, you're writing the next whatever on the side, right? So that said, how are you able to do that in a sustainable way? And this is something I thought was very interesting because having worked with some of the top screenwriters, directors in the world, some of the best engineers, you do see the patterns of the ones that sustainably do great things. And the ones who at 30 are like, I'm burned out. I need to move to a small commune and never see, anyone ever again, And it is interesting. The habits, the ways of dealing with your brain that people have when they do this. And this is a lot. And this is maybe an important thing to talk about is, and I don't know if you've covered this on the pod, about how I discovered flow states. Have you done an episode on flow states?
We haven't done an episode on flow states specifically. It's come up a lot across, tech and just like apps and things like that, and digital health. And so like, what are the conditions for flow states? And so, but feel free to dig into it. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I know a cohort of the listenership, they are flow masters. They're like, I'm in a flow state right now. I'm so cool. Right. And I know a large cohort is like, yes, as you said, I have a passing understanding. I've heard it. I know it's in the zeitgeist. So let's just set the table real quick so everyone's on the same footing, which is there was a Hungarian-American psychologist. His name was Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he had a thesis. He said, you talk to high performers in various disciplines, athletes, artists, scientists, inventors, and when you talk to them about the highly concentrated states where they do the thing that makes them famous, the thing we know them for, they talk about those states in very similar ways. And he's like, why is that? Like, what's up with that? So he did the research, and at the end of it, wrote a book, Flow, seminal work on this, why we call it a flow state. And he said the greatest thing. He said, I chose this word because it was the most beautiful metaphor for what I found. We are all on the river paddling to move ourselves forward. But if we align our boat with the current, it carries us.
Yeah.
It magnifies our efforts, we go further and faster. And that is what these high performers have figured out how to do, and do it repeatably.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of what I do now. Is we built a flow state app where we said, hey, instead of having 5 different pieces of the conditions to help you get into flow state, I personally just wanted to open one website in the morning with a big play button in the center, hit play, have the music begin, have the distraction blocker begin, have a Pomodoro timer, have all like the pieces there so I don't have to think about anything. It's just like start, it's monitoring my tasks, it's blocking my distractions, and letting me do the thing that actually is going to move my life forward. That's really the impetus for creating the Sukha Company. That's our membership is basically all designers, developers, and writers that do knowledge work, whether remote or back in office now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned writing, because I've definitely hit a number of flow states over the winter holiday.
What is it like for you? What is a flow state like for you?
And I was researching this too. Like, it feels like something's taken over my brain, and I'm like a vessel. And I know that, like, I researched that. Like, I know a lot of artists and writers, they're like, yeah, like, this is not even me. Like, this is just like, and I, as someone who, part of the reason I moved to Europe is like, I'm very into electronic music culture. I feel like it's unlocked a lot of things in me, a lot of creativity. And I have a lot of friends who are DJs and producers. And it's similar to what I feel when I'm dancing to electronic music. And like, it's just so embodied. And I feel like there's so many things in society and in life that like kind of disembody us or force us to like use our bodies even against our own will, because we have to make money and all this stuff. And it's just like, man, it's so nice to like be in your own thing, this thing you love, and you're just like, it's pouring out of you. So very much resonate.
Yes. And Mihai writes very beautifully about, there are some conditions, there's some characteristics when you talk to high performers who get into flow states where they go, hey man, you're not looking at the clock. You lose all sense of time. You're doing your best work in a faster speed than you think possible. Distractions fall away. Like, you don't really think about other things. And at the end of this session where you produce great work, you feel a sense of joy or uplift as opposed to depletion, right? Which is really cool. So let me ask you this. One very big part of this is distraction. How do you help distractions? What are the most distracting things to you when you actually have to do deep work? What are the things that pull you out?
I mean, other people.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Other people.
That's why you have headphones so people know not to talk to you, but go on. I'll send you some.
I mean, notifications. I've turned off all notifications on my phone at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so much, any sort of sound, noise. I try to be in a quiet space, which can be difficult when you live in a city or urban environment. I mean, there's loads. And like, I think related to this, and I was going to ask you about this, like, it strikes me that maybe a lot of getting into a flow state and just finding that is what you're saying no to, what you're preventing, what you're avoiding, right?
Yes.
And I follow like, who was it, Kipchoge, the marathon runner, and he talks about like vitamin N. He's like vitamin N, like saying no to things. And like he takes like, I take my vitamin N. I just say no to all these things just instinctively, and that creates space and discipline. And he talks about like discipline as freedom. So like, the great artists are like, they're so disciplined about like clearing out everything else and just that spaciousness that allows flow to even be possible. I think that's like really hard. I mean, this is getting into your product and what you do. Like, that's really hard for a lot of people because we're just so responsive to everything around us, and so how do you actually like, it's kind of allow that for people? So,
Okay. So
yeah.
let me ask you this. I know it's so odd for you to be receiving
Hey, you're turning the
questions.
table, Steven. Wow.
But
Yeah.
let's play that game, okay? So you have something great to write. Perhaps there is a personal or corporate blog piece you want to write, and you are sort of inspired. You want to be in that place the muses are singing, right? If I were sitting next to you as your friend, and when someone walked up to you, I sort of said, "Hey man, Paul's busy right now," and just like block that for you. You reached for your phone. I was like, "Hey man, do you really want to be on your phone right now? Do you want to finish this piece?" You open a website, and I'm like, "Hey man, is that helping?" Would that little check-in, would that little like, "Hey man, is this helping?" be enough for you to go, "Oh yeah, you're right. I don't want to do that now. I want to get this done." Or would you need more?
I think in most cases, it'd be enough. It'd be massive, I think.
Right? Because it's just that 1 second you get to say, who do I want to be? Do I want to be the guy who does great work quickly, or do you want to be the guy at 6 o'clock who's like, "Man, I was busy, but I didn't get all my stuff done,"
No, I mean, I want to be someone who does great work and is able to, and I think about that too with like, like I've been recently been diagnosed with ADHD, and I know that's like a thing now that's like going around and things like that, but it has like allowed me to just like step back a bit and introspect and be like, that's why, that thing is half finished or
there's
not
a
done.
pattern.
It's just pattern recognition. I don't think I'm any less than or different or anything like that, but I'm grateful for folks like yourself and just, there's all these tools. We had Timo, there's another app that's focused on, sort of focus and productivity for ADHD, folks with ADHD and neurodiverse. And just like, okay, like I think we're in a moment where we're realizing the immense, diversity, as the term suggests, of people's minds, and like how we all need different tools to like find that state, and I'm really grateful to be in a moment like that, especially as someone who's coming out of the education context where we stigmatize kids,
Totally with you. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like now we're ready to dig in. I'll explain to you exactly why we built what we built.
Yeah, totally.
Okay?
Yeah.
And thank you for answering those questions.
Sure. Yeah.
So here's the thing. I, like you, had that realization of I've been in a flow state. Even though the very first time I didn't know the term flow state, I was just like, wow, that was amazing. I was on a flight that had no Wi-Fi.
Nice. Yeah.
Right? So suddenly
I regret the flights of Wi-Fi now. Yeah.
I know. Right. You and I have both experienced that thing where it's like, wow, if I could do this repeatably, reliably, this changes like my day.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing feeling to be ahead of your day instead of behind it, right? So this is really the impetus for me, which is when you do the reading, and Mihai wrote an amazing book. And then we have benefited from that, standing on the shoulders of giants thing, where other people have dug down and said, I'm really going to get into deep work. And Cal writes like, what is deep versus shallow? Nia writes about distractions. Kotler writes, you get to read all this like second generation of how do we deconstruct flow and deep work, right? So it's interesting. There are some components that clearly help. There is blocking distractions. So what you and I agreed was exactly what we built. So we give everyone in the Sukha community a free Chrome extension.
Okay.
And you can choose, we give about 20 obvious websites. Like if you're on Amazon or Etsy in the middle of your workday, or NFL.com, or I don't know, Fight, FIFA, whatever, right? You get a little pop-up and it just says, hey, is this helping? And you can choose, I need to be on this. Like suppose, like we have a bunch of publicists who happen to use this. They use Twitter. So they're allowed to say, yes, actually, I need to be on Twitter right now. This is not me screwing around, right? So for the rest of the session, I'll leave it alone. But it just gives you that little moment of saying, oh, yeah, you know what? I could watch this YouTube video later, right?
What about helping people to kind of like organize? Like, can you, like, for example, I have Fridays off because we do a 4-day work week, very much to the point of, the kind of this conversation. And I try to put like deep learning and research onto my like Friday mornings. I know that's a very spacious time where I can just read and like kind of.
Which is amazing. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. We've been doing this since 2022. But like, are you seeing people like reconstruct their days and weeks based on, using the tool?
Let's talk about that. Okay. So if the first idea is like with distraction blocking, we give you a quick modal where there are a bunch of default sites. You can also add your own. You can toggle anything on or off. And be like, oh, actually, I'm really bothered by this weird site, right? And we do the same thing with the phone, by the way. When you start your session, you don't even need to download a mobile app or do anything like that. You start your session, we pop up a QR code. You can tap it with your phone, put your phone down. If you pick up your phone during your session, during your work session, your smart assistant talks to you and says, hey, Paul, is that helping you? I see you on your phone. And again, you get to decide, who do I want to be?
Are you finding that there's like levels to it though? Like, does someone need like their phone to give them like a tiny little electric shock, and other people like,
our community is incredibly like, they are people who are focused on being focused.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just, you need
Just to check
to
in.
tap people on the shoulder and go, hey, at 6 o'clock, do you want to be like out of here, or do you want to be like grumpy that you're not done? And if you give someone that option, it's not like we're talking to children here. These are like engineers, designers,
Are
writers.
you kind of like tying it to what they've said their stated goals are? Like, hey, if you do this, like you will not meet this long-term goal that you have. Like, are you explicitly tying it to that, or is it more in the moment? Yeah.
Here's the thing. I'm going to tell you a funny story. Sukha Company, weird name, right? People can't spell it,
Okay.
So how that came about is we had a working version. And I'll get back to the question you asked about, how does this actually work? What are the guts of it, right? So Laura and I met in yoga in New York. When we got married, where do you go when you have a daily yoga practice on your honeymoon? We went to Bali, right? I'm very grateful my life is a place I can go kick around Bali for a few weeks. So I was talking to her on the flight, and I was like, you know what? I have every bad name in my head for this. We have a working title, and I know we need to name this app. Amazon is not called bookstore, like Nike is not called the shoe place. And I was like, I want to find something that's better than flow state app, distraction blocker. And she said, maybe over the next couple of weeks while we're gone, your unconscious mind will bubble something up. So we got there and we're going to a hotel room. And I said to her, I think what would seed my imagination is, do you mind if I speak to like 2 or 3 members just really quickly today about what's their favorite thing? And maybe over the next few weeks that like germinates. And she's like, I'm going to the pool. I'll see you at dinner. Right. So I put it in the group chat. I was like, who has a moment to talk? Asked the question of them, said, hey, I just need 10 minutes. What's your favorite feature? Do you love the music? Do you love the timers? Do you love the smart assistant? Do you love the blocking? Right? Third guy, I was going into the wrap up. Hey, Paul, promise 10 minutes. Want to let you go. We're at 8 minutes. Thank you so much. And he said to me, he's still a member, by the way. He said to me, Steven, you asked the wrong questions. And I was like, okay, dude, I do not know that well. I'll take the bait. What was the right question? He said, you should have asked me why I pay you. And I was like, we charge like $10 a month. Like, it's not a big deal, but okay, fine. So why do you pay me? And he said, I found the past year that I have 2 kinds of days. At 3 o'clock, I'm playing with my kids. They're currently 2 and 4. Or at 6 o'clock, I'm like, where did the day go? I was busy all day. I'll get up early tomorrow and try and finish today's stuff tomorrow. I realized the difference is, did I hit play in your website before I started work that morning? So I pay you because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. And I was like, you won that round. That was a way better question and answer than what I was asking, right?
Thank you for doing my marketing and branding for me.
I know, exactly. So I go to dinner with Laura. I was like, I spoke to this dude who's more articulate about what I do than I am. And she's like, you should pay him. You should employ him.
No, but that's what you want your customers to be like, telling truths, I think, that maybe even you haven't uncovered.
That's it. That's exactly it. We're going to bed that night in our little spa robes, thinking we're like cute little honeymooners, brushing our little teeth. And Laura looks at me with a mouthful of toothpaste, and she goes, you wanted the universe to speak to you, the muses they did through that guy.
Yeah,
she said, we in yoga hear all these Sanskrit, prana, your life force, and karma, and your dharma. She's like, he described to you Sukha, that feeling when you're in your lane doing what you're meant to do, and you can do it with ease. You're in control of your day, not controlled by it. She's like, that's what you should name your company. That's really where you want to get people. So that's why I call it the Sukha Company, the happiness company, self-fulfillment company. Yeah. And that ultimately is what all these pieces serve. That's why we have the music we have, the distraction blocker, the timer. You brought up time blocking when you talk about like your Friday morning, right? This is something I've counseled a lot of leaders, team leaders to do. To say, hey, research shows it takes a minimum of 15 and up to 23 minutes to get into flow. You don't snap your fingers and be like, I'm in a flow state. I'm doing great work, right? And if you get interrupted, it takes another 15 to 23 to get back. So if you actually want your team to be doing the work that puts you ahead of the competition, that changes the trajectory of your company, don't ask people to do it in between Zoom and team meetings during the day. Like, you have 17 minutes, do something brilliant. You need to actually have an agreement on your team going, hey, you know what? Thursday morning, let's block out 2 hours. Treat it sacred. Nobody book any client meetings. Don't slack each other. Don't do great work. Do something. And you know what? Some days, nothing great will come of it. But every now and then, there'll be that thing where Paul goes, I thought of this yesterday. And people are like, dude, we should build that like right now.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, what do you
blocking?
Yeah, and like I think the interesting thing about blocking too is like I was actually thinking like, is there a benefit in having it be relocating, right? Like okay, Paul, you could read this juicy article right now, but like maybe you should focus on the task at hand. Put that in your Friday learning block. Like, are you seeing people just sort of delay gratification and relocate rather than just block? Like, yeah,
this is maybe a little too revealing about me. But this is one of those, like, I solved a problem for me and then I found out other people might have this problem, okay? So here's the funny thing. I know that Like I was in the workforce when multitasking was seen as this great thing that smart people could juggle multiple, spin all these plates or so, right? And then later it was like, oh, guess what? We discovered multitasking is really just monotasking with burning your brain doing context switching.
Mm.
Okay, good to know. Now, as someone medically diagnosed with ADHD, hello, Paul, nice to see you. So I realized that one of the problems I have is in the morning, I will look at my task list. Let's say there's 17 things on it. And there's a certain element of paralysis for me where I'm like, oh man, all that shit needs to get done. But, how am I going to do all of it? And when I could see all of it during the day, I would skip around and sort of like, oh, I could, write this email real quick and do this. But then I should probably update that spreadsheet. And then, oh, I need to figure out the blog thing for later. I'll write a paragraph. And that is not efficient. That is not great way to work. Did the stupidest thing. You're going to laugh at how stupid simple this sounds. When you hit play in Sukha and music begins and my distractions blocked and all that, I made it so it hides your whole task list except the top 3 things, whatever's most important at the top. It helps me from having that feeling of looking around. So we rolled it out to everyone. Our members are now 77% more likely to finish all 3 when they can only see those 3 than when they could see the whole list, they would finish 2 or 1.
Yeah. I love those little design things, as you study in education, like universal design for learning, imagine, right? Like these optimizations that are meant for people with certain, learning variations or neurodiverse, but they actually work for most people, and no shit, Sherlock. If you remove the 17, top 3 get done better. It's kind of, not to put down what you said, but it's just
I completely agree. That's how I feel. Some of the things we did were so and I've learned a bunch. I'll give you a concrete example of something I learned. So guess what? I worked in film for a long time, Paul, when I did the research and setting this up on what kind of flow music really works, right? And there's a ton of research on it now, right? Oh, kind of 60 for the sweet spot for most people is kind of 60 to 90 beats per minute, certain key signatures, non-vocals. You're not singing along with Blackpink or whatever your jam is, right? And kind of long melodic stretches. I have a bunch of friends who are film composers who have time on their hands. Hey, could you write me 1,000 hours of music, sort of inspired, but within these guardrails? Great. We do that. I feel super lucky to have this edge on a lot of people, right? As we're working on it. And we all have the friend who is the outlier. Who's I listen to show tunes or 90s gangster rap or, whatever it may be, right? But for most people, this works great. So here's a funny thing. Buddy of mine, Julian, up in Marin, he does the sound mixing for a lot of the LucasArts, the Star Wars games. Called me up one day. He's like, hey, man, I just got back from Nepal. How's Nepal? Why were we there? With my son's high school graduation gift. He did a great job. He got into some great school. So we wanted to go to Nepal. So we took him. Here's why I'm calling you. While we were there, one day in Kathmandu, it rained so hard we couldn't even go out. It was this lush, delicious warm rain. He said, I had some of my recording equipment there, so I recorded it 2 hours of rain. Kind of odd. Didn't really know what to do with it. I got back and I thought, you know what? Your app, maybe you want it? I was like, for free? Sure. So we quietly made a playlist in the middle of all the lo-fi beats and the binaural beats kind of playlist. We made a playlist that was just called Himalayan Dream Rain. And that's all it is Julian's recording of rain in Kathmandu.
Wow. That's incredible.
It became, without any marketing, the 3rd most played playlist in the app.
Wow.
And I was like, after I spent all this money on this, rain is okay. So, I run the app. I can see who's listening to it. I emailed some people. It's like, hey, Paul, can I talk to you real quick? I just want to understand this. So we chatted with a couple of people and I was like, so what is it about the rain that
why the rain,
you listen to that? I see more than you listen to all this scientifically designed music that we had originally done, right? And it was super interesting how it was about this way rain evoked. It returned people to a certain place in their lives. I got stories about when I was in high school, my grandmother raised me and she was in Georgia. And I just associate being inside with the rain outside at certain times of year when I had to study. And it just brings me back. My parents had a lake house. And it was all this childhood thing of I would have to study when it was raining out where I lived. And it brings me back there. And I realized that's really cool. So we experimented. I mean, after that, of course, I tried other naturescapes. Surf in Cyprus, dream in Japan, a lake in Canada that has these indigenous birds that are very particular. Popular, not that popular. The rain was the home run.
Well, it's nostalgia and biophilia, right? That's kind of.
It is funny the way that works, yeah. And the other funny one is there's a blogger, she's pretty well known, who writes in Sukha. She's also in London or around London, and she saw that I had launched this rain thing. And she said, oh, I thought you were only doing music stuff, but since you're doing rain, can I ask a favor? She's like, I had a child during the pandemic. I used to write my blog in a coffee shop here. I can't really go with a 1-year-old to a coffee shop and like, she's like, any chance you could put up a playlist that's just coffee shop sounds to kind of help me do that? And we found Michael, one of my partners, found some guy in Vienna, Austria, had recorded his local coffee shop. Don't know why, but he recorded it, posted it like, hey, anybody, here's a coffee. So we made it a playlist, called it Cafe Vienne. And also, Like the Rain became super popular because I realized for a lot of writers, coffee shop is a way to evoke, I'm in this place where all these people are being creative together. Like when I was a development executive, there's a Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf across Sunset Boulevard from the Directors Guild. It's known as kind of a writer's clubhouse. Not super social. Everyone's just not running over to tables. What are you working on? But when you walk in there and everybody's on their MacBooks writing away, and there's like the old guy in the corner, who's written like $2 or $3 million screenplays this year, but he still comes here because it's his habit from back when he was a young punk coming up, Right, and, you have people who just got off the bus writing their first TV pilot. And that feeling in that room of being together and that, hearing the little the espresso machines and the little plates clattering, it is a powerful trigger. So I share all this because these are things I learned in the course of doing this that I did not know 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's incredible. But I mean, I want to finish like with kind of like looking ahead to the future.
Yeah.
Like help our audience understand like what's next for Sukha and sort of what's your sense of like the future of remote work? What does it really look like based on the problems the patterns that you're seeing? What does it really look like based on what you're seeing from your user base, the data, the interactions? You told some amazing stories about interacting with your users. What are you seeing as kind of the next frontier?
Two important forces. To answer your question, there are two forces to understand. AI is going to change and is changing the white collar workforce the same way like industrialization and globalization changed the blue collar workforce, right? So those jobs are all shuffling around, and it has become much, much more important in the white collar world to be a high level strategist than it is to be a paper pusher kind of, sort of things. 100%. Yes, the people who are guiding strategy are going to survive, right?
Yeah.
But AI does a lot of the routine jobs better and cheaper than humans do. That's the way it is. So why not use it, right? So the answer to your question is yes, there's one force, which is, this RTO push. Like the pendulum swung to remote, distributed, asynchronous, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And then swang back to RTO. It's going to stabilize maybe middle-ish because you're going to realize I run a company, I run a team. What I actually care about is the quality of our output being better than our competitors. So you're going to find those senior people, and some of them are not going to be under the same fluorescent lights every day in your headquarters town, right? So because AI is going to force that, I think you're going to see a move back towards a high level kind of remote thing where people will come together on a regular cadence. But there is a thing of like, dude, this is the most amazing like content strategist or head of product, and they don't happen to live in Nashville where I am. Yeah. So are we going to forego having them? Hell no.
Then I think a larger question too of like how do younger generations get there? Like as the context changes,
that
like where it's like
hard one, man.
Yeah,
that is next hard.
Yeah, and I think
especially because I got a little kid downstairs. I've got a 9-week-old, and I'm thinking a lot about like what kind of training are you going to have for a job someday?
I mean, naturally, all this stuff will have to so much will have to change in education and sort of career development, and they're like it's tragic because there'll frankly be fewer jobs for people who are more highly skilled and more senior, are able to get that to that level of being that senior strategist, whether it's like through their dad who's an amazing strategist or through something else. And so we have to really think about our society and what that means for it, and how people access that, so it's
there you go.
Wild.
This has been awesome, Paul. Thank you so much for having me on. I hope this has been helpful for those listening at home or driving in their cars.
No. I mean, the stories that you've told have been incredible, and thank you for pushing me as a host to be more reflective and answering some questions myself for a change and being more story driven. I think this is like one of my favorite episodes of last year and this year so far. So, I'll give you that.
So pleased to have been part of it.
I mean, in terms of what you're doing, I'd love for you to let our listeners know where they can find out a bit more about Sukha and the great work that you're doing and to start building healthier habits.
Super easy. If there is anything that I've said, it does not have to relate to my company. But if someone's like, who's Cal Newport? What was that Hungarian dude? Whatever. I will reply to your email with something to read. So if someone's curious, my email address is very public. It's Steven, Steven, @thesukha, TheSukha.co. I will not write you back the story of my life. I don't have time and you don't care. But I will give you some interesting blog post to go, oh, you want to know more about time blocking? Here's a great thing to read, okay?
I love the irony of like a productivity and flow state expert inviting more email into his inbox for hundreds of people who are going to be hitting you up. But yeah,
I have realized my place in this world is to serve.
That's
and
great.
Definitely becoming a dad has driven that home for me, that there is a joy I have in just being like, how can I help you be who you want to be? So yeah, if someone has a question I can help, it is my path. It is not a distraction from my path.
Yeah. And I relate to that. Like I started my career as a middle school teacher, and there's just like, for me, like no greater joy in like watching someone, even an adult, like learn something and like excel at something that
it's amazing.
It's an incredible high, I would say. So
totally with you. And of course, if someone wants to experiment with getting into a flow state, we made an app. It's free for 3 days. Try it all you want. See if it works for you. It's at, shockingly, Sukha, TheSukha.co for company. And come drop in the group chat and say hi. I heard you on Paul's podcast.
Cool. Look, I'd love this conversation. I think, like Steven, you bring such a rare blend of that Hollywood creativity and that kind of tech discipline to this problem of remote work that is only going to get bigger in some ways. And hopefully you're going to make it a bit smaller. But I think you're tackling something we all face, which is just how to stay focused and healthy while working from home or working from anywhere. So in a way, but it's also it's humid, it's grounded, it's refreshingly practical. So thank you for that. Folks who are listening, please give us a review, give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed the episode. Helps us bring more great guests like Steven onto the show and to talk about great apps like Sukha. So thanks, Steven. Thanks, everybody.